Comrades, ask yourselves, whose dreams are you living? Whose hopes do you chase as if they were your own? Pause and look around you. From the moment of your birth, the world has whispered to you, molded you, and taught you to desire what serves not your life, but the profit of another. Your aspirations, your ambitions, your very fantasies of a better life have not grown from your own minds. They have been planted, carefully engineered, by a system that feeds upon your labor and sells back to you the illusion of freedom. Capitalism does not merely exploit your hands, it exploits your hearts, your imagination, your very dreams. It tells you that you can climb the ladder of success, that if you work harder, if you sacrifice more, you will be free. Yet, freedom in this system is nothing but a mirage. The ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. The rules are rigged. The winners were chosen before you even took your first step. And so you toil, you compete, you exhaust yourself for the benefit of those who never risk a day of struggle, who never bled in the fields, factories, or offices you populate. Look closely at society, and you will see it for what it is, a machine built not for justice, not for the flourishing of humanity, but for the accumulation of wealth in the hands of a few. From your schools to your workplaces, from the media you consume to the product you buy, every structure teaches obedience, consumption, and submission. Every story glorifies those who made it, while hiding the millions who built the world that allowed such accumulation. You are told that success is meritocratic, that talent and effort alone shape destiny, but these are lies carefully designed to mask the theft of your labor and the extraction of your dreams. The system shapes your desires because it must. Capitalism survives not by coercion alone, but by seducing you into believing that your servitude is choice. Your ambition becomes its tool. Your dreams become its commodity. The factory of your mind produces the illusion of personal achievement, while your labor produces the material wealth that fuels the coffers of the ruling class. You are not free, you are harnessed. But history is not immutable. The chains of ideology can be broken as surely as the chains of iron. The workers of the world, the laborers, the creatives, the mothers, the thinkers, the oppressed have the power to reclaim what has been stolen from them. No longer must we be content with the crumbs thrown to us as opportunity. No longer must we believe that our value lies in the profit we generate for others. When we unite, when we organize, when we recognize our shared condition, we wield a power greater than any corporation, greater than any state, greater than any capital accumulation. It is the unity of the working class, the conscious collective of the oppressed, that can overturn the false world they have built for us. We must see through the spectacle of commodities and media distraction. We must refuse to internalize the values of those who profit from our toil. We must understand that our dreams, our true dreams, can only be realized when the means of life, of production, and of society are returned to the hands of those who create them. The time is now. Each hour we hesitate, each day we toil in ignorance, the system tightens its grip. Every luxury sold to us is purchased with our deferred freedom. Every promise of individual success is a chain disguised as aspiration. But we are more than cogs. We are more than consumers. We are the creators of history, the makers of society, the shapers of life itself. And when we awaken to our collective strength, nothing can resist us. Rise, comrades, speak with one voice, organize with one purpose. Reclaim your labor, reclaim your minds, reclaim your dreams. For your dreams were never truly yours. They were lent to you by a system that profits from them. Take them back, and you will have taken back your life, your power, and the possibility of a society where work serves humanity, not the accumulation of capital. The chains that bind you are not eternal. They are forged by human hands, and they can be broken by human hands. The world belongs not to those who profit from our dreams, but to those who dream of a world where all may live freely, fully, and with dignity. Let us, together, make that world a reality. From the moment we are born, our desires, ambitions and visions of the future are subtly guided by forces that serve the interests of a system designed to profit from our labor, our creativity, and even our very imagination. We are told to aspire, to dream, to seek more, but what we fail to recognize is that these dreams are rarely born of our own untainted judgment. They are carefully cultivated, nurtured, and shaped by an economic and social order that seeks to harness them for its own accumulation of wealth. The schools we attend teach not only knowledge but also conformity, instilling a notion of success that is measured in wealth, status, and consumption. The media we consume, the advertisements that surround us, the stories that are glorified in literature and film, all of these are instruments in the shaping of desires, presenting a narrow vision of what it means to live a good life, to be worthy, to be fulfilled. We learn from an early age that to aspire is to desire what others want us to desire, that to be ambitious is to follow a script written by those who profit from our labor. Even our personal dreams, those intimate and deeply felt visions of happiness or success, are not immune from this shaping. They are filtered through the lens of a society that rewards accumulation and punishes deviation from its norms. When we dream of career advancement, we are often dreaming of positions and achievement that primarily serve the objectives of capital rather than the flourishing of human life. When we imagine a life of comfort or security, we are imagining the consumption of goods and services that generate profit for someone else, frequently at the expense of our own labor or the labor of others whom we will never see. In this sense, our ambitions are commodities produced and distributed by an invisible hand that guides not only markets but also minds, teaching us to equate self-worth with economic achievement. The system does not simply exploit our hands in factories or offices, it exploits our imagination, our hopes, our capacity to plan, strive, and desire. It converts aspiration into productivity, turning the internal energy of our dreams into external profit for those who hold the means of production. Our longing for improvement, advancement, and self-actualization become an engine for economic growth, a source of capital accumulation that is extracted without our conscious consent, without our awareness of how our very creativity and hope are being monetized. The illusion of choice reinforces this exploitation. We are told that we are free to dream, free to choose our paths, free to succeed or fail based on talent and effort. Yet the choices we believe we are making are constrained within a framework that has been carefully constructed to serve the interests of those who already possess power. Our dreams are shaped to be achievable only in ways that leave the structure of inequality intact, to be ambitious in directions that never threaten the accumulation of wealth by the ruling class. The system creates aspiration and then monetizes it. It teaches us to compete against one another, to measure our value against the standards of a society that benefits from our subjugation, ensuring that our energies are directed towards self-interest in a manner that upholds the existing hierarchy. Even resistance is anticipated, commodified, and neutralized, for the system is adept at absorbing criticism, transforming rebellion into marketable trends, turning dissent into spectacle, and selling it back to us in ways that reinforce the very structures we seek to challenge. In this environment, the dreams of the individual are rarely isolated. They are socialized, molded by advertising, education, social expectations, and cultural narratives that align personal desire with collective exploitation. Our ambitions are not purely personal, they are interconnected with a network of economic relations that dictates what is desirable, what is attainable, and what is possible. When we strive for wealth, fame, comfort, or recognition, we often pursue goals that reinforce our own subordination within a larger system, unaware that our efforts primarily serve to enrich others, to sustain inequalities, and to perpetuate cycles of dependence and exploitation. This shaping of dreams is not an incidental byproduct of society. It is a fundamental mechanism of capitalist power, a way of ensuring that human energy, creativity, and imagination are harnessed for profit rather than human flourishing. The challenge, therefore, is not merely to succeed within the system, but to recognize how the system shapes our conception of success, to discern the ways in which our deepest aspirations have been influenced, and to reclaim the capacity to dream beyond the confines imposed by those who profit from our desires. The recognition that our dreams have been constructed by external forces is the first step toward liberation, toward the possibility of aligning aspiration with human need rather than capital accumulation, and toward building a society in which the shaping of dreams serves collective emancipation rather than private enrichment. Capitalism is often understood in the narrow sense as the exploitation of labor, the extraction of surplus value from workers' hands, the conversion of hours and effort into profit for those who own the means of production. Yet, this understanding is incomplete, for capitalism does not merely take the sweat and toil of the body. It penetrates far deeper, reaching into the very essence of human thought, into our imagination, our desires, and the ambitions we hold as if they were inherently our own. From the earliest moments of life, we are socialized to internalize the logic of the market, to imagine success in terms of accumulation, to desire recognition in forms that serve those who control wealth. The dreams we cultivate, the futures we envision for ourselves, are not autonomous. They are structured by forces that profit from our aspiration. The advertisements we see, the media we consume, the cultural narratives that dominate our schools, our workplaces, our home, all of these shape our imagination, defining what is desirable, what is worthy of pursuit, and what constitutes fulfillment. A child is encouraged to study not merely to learn, but to secure a career that will produce income. An adult is persuaded to buy a house, a car, or a brand, not because these objects inherently enrich life, but because their acquisition fuels industries and capital accumulation. Our desire, which might otherwise be directed toward communal flourishing, creativity, or self-realization, is channeled into pathways that benefit those who profit from our labor. Even our dreams of personal achievement are structured to reinforce systemic inequality. We are told that wealth and recognition are attainable through talent, diligence, and perseverance. Yet this narrative obscures the structural reality that limit opportunity, concentrate power, and ensure that the fruits of labor disproportionately benefit those who already own the means of production. Capitalism exploits our imagination by presenting illusions of freedom and possibility, while constraining the actual parameters within which we may act. When we aspire, we are often aspiring not to freedom, but to the approval of a market that values productivity over humanity, profit over fulfillment. Our ambition becomes a mechanism of control. Our creativity is redirected into forms that generate exchange value rather than intrinsic human value. Even resistance and critique are commodified. Activism, rebellion, and dissent are anticipated by capitalist structures and absorbed, transformed into marketable ideas, trends, or entertainment that reinforce rather than challenge the system. The imagination, once a realm of liberation and innovation, becomes a field for producing symbolic value, brand loyalty, and ideological conformity. Our emotional and cognitive energies, the very faculties that could be devoted to reimagining society, are harnessed to maintain the illusion of choice, the spectacle of competition, and the relentless pursuit of personal gain within a system that thrives on inequality. The exploitation of desire also extends to social relationships and identity. Capitalism encourages comparison, envy, and aspiration in ways that generate consumption and sustain hierarchies. We are made to believe that happiness and social acceptance are tied to objects, achievements, and appearance, and in pursuing these, we inadvertently participate in the reinforcement of capitalist structures. Even our capacity to hope, to envision a better future, is conditioned, align with objectives that benefit the few rather than the collective. Furthermore, capitalism thrives on the notion that aspiration itself is valuable and productive. By convincing people to dream, to seek more, to imagine a life beyond their current condition, the system channels human creativity into labor and consumption that ultimately reproduces its own power. Our hopes and fantasies, instead of being autonomous expressions of human potential, become tools of extraction, ways to generate profit from our own imagination. Education, media, technology, and culture are all deployed to shape what we perceive as desirable, to structure our ambitions so that they never threaten the system but instead ensure its survival. In this sense, the capitalist system does not simply demand labor. It demands our minds, our hearts, our aspirations, converting them into productive forces that serve capital rather than humanity. The exploitation of desire, imagination, and aspiration is subtle yet pervasive, creating a society in which even our inner lives, our dreams of fulfillment, and our pursuit of meaning are aligned, with objectives that ultimately serve the accumulation of wealth for a few, leaving the majority to toil, compete, and aspire within a structure that was never designed for their emancipation. Recognition of this exploitation is the first step toward reclaiming the capacity to dream freely, to imagine beyond profit, and to direct our desires and creativity toward collective liberation and the flourishing of human life rather than the enrichment of capital. We are often told that the world is fair, that success belongs to those who work the hardest, that talent and effort determine destiny. This notion, celebrated as meritocracy, is one of the most powerful illusions of our age, a narrative carefully constructed to mask systemic theft and entrenched inequality. Meritocracy presents itself as a universal truth, a natural order in which those who excel rise, and those who falter fall. But this story is designed not to illuminate reality, but to obscure it. The structures of society, the economy, the education system, the legal frameworks, the networks of influence are not neutral playing fields. They are instruments of power maintained to benefit those who already possess wealth, status, and control over the means of production. The myth of meritocracy convinces the oppressed to internalize blame, to view their struggles as failures of character or ability, rather than as consequences of systemic barriers deliberately constructed to protect the interests of the ruling class. It teaches workers to compete against one another, to measure themselves against standards defined by those who profit from inequality, and to accept scarcity as natural rather than engineered. Consider the educational system, often held up as the great equalizer. Schools, universities, and credentialing institutions are presented as pathways to success, where hard work guarantees opportunity. Yet, these institutions are embedded in social and economic hierarchy that determine who has access, who is prepared, and who can excel. Quality education is distributed unequally. Access to resources is limited by wealth and social capital, and networks of influence often determine outcomes more than ability or diligence. A student from a wealthy background may enjoy tutors, enrichment programs, elite schools, and connections that a student from a working-class family can only dream of, creating a system in which merit is inseparable from inherited privilege. In the workplace, the myth persists in promotions, performance evaluations, and organizational hierarchies. The system celebrates those who rise through merit while failing to acknowledge the structural advantages they may have received. Nepotism, inherited wealth, social connections, and prior access to opportunities frequently decide who succeeds. Yet, the narrative of meritocracy convinces individuals that they earned their positions solely through talent and effort. Meanwhile, Those excluded from advancement internalize their disadvantage as personal failure rather than recognizing it as a reflection of systemic inequity. Meritocracy also functions ideologically to justify economic inequality. The accumulation of vast wealth by a few is framed as evidence of superior ability, ingenuity, or industriousness, while poverty is framed as a moral or intellectual deficiency. This masking of structural theft legitimizes a system in which labor is exploited and surplus value extracted, obscuring the reality that the wealth of the few is built upon the deprivation and subordination of the many. By celebrating merit as the determinant of success, the system ensures compliance with its rules, encouraging workers to focus on individual achievement within a framework that perpetuates their exploitation rather than questioning the framework itself. Social mobility, often cited as proof of meritocracy, is in fact limited and selective, serving more as a mirage than a genuine pathway for the majority. The rare examples of individuals who beat the odds are elevated as heroes, reinforcing the illusion that anyone can succeed if they try hard enough, while concealing the broader patterns of systemic exclusion. In reality, the structure is rigged, opportunities, resources, and privileges are distributed in ways that favor the already advantaged, while those at the bottom are systematically denied the conditions necessary for success. The illusion of meritocracy also shapes the psychology of the oppressed, turning discontent inward. Workers, students, and marginalized populations internalize responsibility for structural injustices, blaming themselves for their lack of advancement rather than recognizing the broader social and economic mechanisms that limit their opportunities. This internalization is a powerful tool of control, ensuring that collective solidarity is weakened and that the focus remains on individual competition rather than systemic change. Understanding the illusion of meritocracy is critical for dismantling inequality. To see through it is to recognize that wealth and success are not purely the product of talent or effort, but of social arrangements deliberately structured to concentrate power and resources in the hands of a few. The narratives of fairness and equal opportunity serve not to liberate, but to pacify. They mask the theft of labor, the hoarding of resources, and the systemic mechanisms that sustain class hierarchies. Only by exposing the lie of meritocracy can the working class begin to unite, to reclaim the means of production, to challenge entrenched structures, and to construct a society in which opportunity, resources, and the fruits of labor are distributed according to need and justice rather than inherited privilege or engineered illusion. The history of human society, when examined without the illusions imposed by ruling powers, reveals one undeniable truth: the collective strength of the working class is the only force capable of challenging entrenched systems of exploitation and oppression. Power is never ceded voluntarily by those who benefit from inequality. It is seized only through organized, conscious, and unified action. Individuals, no matter how talented, diligent, or ambitious, cannot dismantle structures of domination alone, for the machinery of capitalism and its allied institutions is vast, interlocking, and designed to perpetuate the advantage of the few over the many. The illusion of individual success obscures the reality that the wealth, security, and privilege enjoyed by a small minority are built upon the coordinated labor of millions whose efforts are fragmented, isolated, and undervalued. It is only when the working class recognizes its shared condition, its common exploitation, and the collective power inherent in its numbers that true transformation becomes possible. Unity is not a passive state of coexistence. It is a deliberate, active commitment to understanding one another's struggles, to forging solidarity across industries, communities and identities. When workers unite, the individual becomes part of a force far greater than the sum of its parts, a force capable of resisting coercion, challenging authority, and reclaiming control over the conditions of life and labor. Organization is the practical manifestation of this unity. To be united without structure is to risk dispersion, co-optation, and ineffectiveness. Through organization, the working class can coordinate strategy, articulate demands, and sustain momentum against forces that would seek to divide, distract, and dominate. History provides countless examples of the consequences of disunity. Isolated protests are suppressed, fragmented strikes are broken, and solitary dissenters are silenced. It is the capacity to act collectively, to align efforts toward shared goals that transform the abstract potential of numbers into tangible power capable of reshaping society. Organization also allows for the transmission of knowledge, consciousness, and strategy across communities, ensuring that struggles are not merely reactive, but informed by a deep understanding of the systemic roots of exploitation. By organizing, workers develop the capacity to challenge not only individual instances of injustice, but the very frameworks that enable inequality to persist. Unity and organization are inseparable from consciousness. Workers must first recognize the structures that oppress them, understand the mechanisms by which capital extracts value from labor, and see that the division among themselves, whether by race, gender, skill, or social background, is a deliberate tactic of the ruling class to weaken resistance. Division is the weapon of the elite. Solidarity is the weapon of the oppressed. Only by overcoming artificially constructed barriers and embracing a shared struggle can the working class exercise the collective strength necessary to challenge domination. Furthermore, unity and organization create the conditions for strategic action. Strikes, protests, labor unions, cooperative ventures, and political movements derive their power not from isolated effort, but from the coordinated and deliberate mobilization of many. When workers act together, they can assert demands that no individual could achieve alone, disrupt the processes of production that underpin capitalist wealth, and force society to recognize that labor is the source of all material and social value. Organization also instills resilience. Capitalism relies not only on the extraction of labor, but on the fragmentation, distraction, and exhaustion of those who provide it. By organizing, the working class can share knowledge, distribute resources, and sustain morale in the face of repression, coercion, and hardship. Solidarity provides protection, strategy, and the capacity to act with foresight rather than mere reaction. Unity is also ideological, a reclaiming of narrative power. When workers speak as one, when their collective voice is heard, they challenge the legitimacy of the narratives imposed by those who benefit from exploitation. The illusion that society functions on merit or individual effort crumbles under the weight of organized resistance, revealing the systemic inequalities and engineered scarcity that have long been obscured. Finally, the unity and organization of the working class are not ends in themselves, but means to reclaim power over society. The structures of production, the institutions of governance, the allocation of resources, and the distribution of wealth can only be redirected toward justice and human flourishing if the working class exercises collective authority. The recognition of common interest, the deliberate coordination of action, and the cultivation of solidarity across every divide transform potential into power, aspiration into concrete capability, and awareness into revolutionary possibility. True freedom cannot be found in the isolated triumphs of individuals, nor can it be measured by the accumulation of personal wealth, status, or possession. It is not the ability to consume, to climb the social ladder, or to achieve recognition within the framework of an exploitative system. Freedom, in its genuine and human sense, is the capacity to live fully, creatively, and with dignity, unbound by the constraints imposed by structures that prioritize profit over life, hierarchy over justice, and power over humanity. Yet under capitalism, this freedom is systematically denied. The vast inequalities in wealth, opportunity, and power serve not only to exploit labor but to limit the horizons of imagination, ambition, and possibility. Individuals may achieve personal success, but this success is circumscribed by a social order designed to preserve the advantage of a few, to extract labor, and to commodify human potential. The realization of human potential, therefore, cannot occur within a system that transforms aspiration into productivity for others and converts creativity, innovation, and labor into profits for those who already hold power. True liberation is collective, because human beings are inherently social creatures, and the conditions of one are bound to the conditions of all. No individual can fully flourish while the majority remain constrained by exploitation, poverty, or deprivation. The genius of collective transformation lies in its capacity to redefine various structures that shape human life, to redistribute power, and to create conditions under which every person can exercise agency, develop talents, and pursue fulfillment, without the constant interference of economic and social hierarchies. Social transformation begins with consciousness, the awareness that individual freedom is inseparable from collective emancipation. It is the understanding that oppression is systemic, that the barriers to full human development are embedded in institutions, economic relations, and cultural norms, and that these barriers cannot be overcome through isolated effort alone. Only when people recognize their shared condition, their mutual interest, and the interdependence of their well-being can the struggle for liberation become a coordinated, conscious, and effective movement. Collective action is the practical manifestation of this awareness. Through organization, solidarity, and cooperative struggle, community can challenge the structures that inhibit freedom and human potential. Strikes, revolutions, cooperative enterprises, and political movements are not merely tactics. They are expressions of the deeper principle that emancipation is inherently communal. The transformation of society requires both the dismantling of oppressive institutions and the construction of new forms of social, economic, and political relations that prioritize human need over profit, cooperation over competition, and equality over hierarchy. In such a transformed society, freedom is not an abstract ideal but a tangible reality. It is the ability to work not under coercion but by choice, to create, not for the enrichment of others but for the fulfillment of collective and individual potential, to live not in fear of scarcity, exclusion, or oppression, but with security, dignity, and opportunity. Human potential, in this sense, is not merely intellectual or material. It encompasses moral, social, emotional, and creative dimensions. It is realized when people can educate themselves fully, contribute meaningfully to their communities, express themselves freely, and participate in shaping the institutions and practices that govern their lives. Collective social transformation is the only pathway to such realization because systemic barriers are interlinked, pervasive, and resistant to piecemeal reform. Individual efforts, no matter how sincere or determined, cannot overturn structures designed to preserve inequality and concentrate power. Only through shared struggle, coordinated action, and the deliberate reshaping of social, economic, and political relations can the conditions for full human development emerge. Furthermore, collective transformation cultivates a culture of solidarity, empathy, and shared responsibility, without which freedom remains hollow. The liberation of one requires the liberation of all, for society is not a collection of isolated agents, but an interconnected network in which the flourishing of each individual depends upon the well-being of the community. In such a society, work ceases to be a means of exploitation and becomes a vehicle for self-expression, creativity, and social contribution. Education ceases to be a mechanism for selection and control and becomes a tool for empowerment and the cultivation of critical thought. Governance ceases to serve elite interests and becomes an instrument for participatory decision-making and collective welfare. The realization of human potential is therefore inseparable from social justice, equality, and the dismantling of hierarchies that constrain opportunity. It is a holistic process in which freedom is lived, shared, and enacted through relationships, institutions, and practices that reflect the dignity, worth, and capacity of every human being. Comrades, the truths we have confronted today are undeniable. Our dreams have been shaped to serve others. Our desires and aspirations have been exploited. The illusion of meritocracy conceals systemic theft, and our power remains dormant unless we unite and organize. True freedom and human potential cannot be realized within a system designed to benefit a few at the expense of the many. The path forward is clear. We must recognize the structures that bind us, see through the illusion that pacify us, and act collectively to reclaim our labor, our minds, and our lives. Our liberation is not a gift to be granted by those in power. It is a task to be seized through solidarity, conscious struggle, and the transformation of society itself. Only together, united in purpose and unwavering in determination, can we dismantle the systems of exploitation, reshape the world to serve humanity rather than capital, and build a society where every individual can truly dream, create, and flourish. The time to awaken, to organize, and to rise is now, for our destiny lies not in the hands of the few, but in our own collective action.